Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to another episode of In the Frame. This episode we're back on Indicator, and I'm just going to show you the 4 Indicator releases for June, because if you're a certain type of person who knows what an Indicator film is, and all the ramifications of what that sentence means, then you should get a lot of pleasure from these 4 films. Now, I was Indicator complete. I'm no longer Indicator complete because I have moved on from some titles that I'm probably never going to watch again, but I still pre-order them every month because I do like to support Indicator because they are a small company. So the 4 titles are Spy Number 263, Tomorrow We Live, directed by George King, 264, The Shop at Sly Corner, directed by George King, Obsession, or The Hidden Room, directed by Edward Dmytryk when he was over in Britain for a year, and The Whole Truth, directed by John Guillermin, who directed a whole bunch of stuff. Now, none of these 4 films I was particularly familiar with. None of these 4 films you would call masterworks. And I know that's a criticism perhaps some people have of Indicator, that they don't have enough, great films. That's subjective. But I ended up watching these all in one day, because the longest one's like 99 minutes, and they're just so watchable. But they all have their own wonderful charms, and as usual, Indicator does a superb job with the extras. They're all a little bit different, so I'm not going to go into too much detail on all of them because they don't really warrant a video by themselves, but they certainly do warrant a video as a collective, because it's almost like a perfect Indicator month. And again, if you're a certain kind of person like me, you should get so much pleasure from these films. But I would say, there's 3,000 of each of these, so you could probably wait until next year's sale to pick them up a little bit cheaper than full price. But I'm certainly happy to have them because they are just wonderful little films. So this is Tomorrow We Live, directed by Henry King, starring John Clements, Godfrey Terrell. If you want to know who Godfrey Terrell is, he was in One of Our Aircraft Is Missing the year before for Powell and Pressburger. He's the older gentleman, the airman with the moustache. Controversial in this film, he doesn't have a moustache. He plays the mayor of a French town who's occupied by the Germans. Hugh Sinclair, Greta Gint, who really should have been bigger than she actually was, as far as a career, not in stature. Lots of familiar faces. Now obviously this is English actors pretending to be French. Some of them do put on a French twang, whereas others just speak that posh English. But of course our suspension of disbelief is that they're actually French. And it's a resistance film. Now it's not Army of Shadows. It's kind of that, it's 1942 and perhaps the horrors of the concentration camps haven't really been discovered. So the German officers in the little town kind of just want to learn how to dance and stuff, and it's only when the Gestapo turn up later that the film turns somewhat darker, but it's actually fairly light for like the first hour or so. It's only 85 minutes and it just flies by. It's shot by Otto Heller, who's one of the great cinematographers, but interestingly, one of the editors in the film is Terence Fisher, who would go on to direct plenty of Hammer films. So again, here is John Clements pretending to be a Frenchman. And there's what George King looks like. And again, there's two women, Greta Gint and Judy Kelly, I believe, who may not be collaborators, and it's that kind of mystery of who's the collaborators. It's just really well done. Again, it's not as dark as it probably should be until, as I say, the last kind of 10-15 minutes when the Gestapo turn up, and then it takes a little bit of a darker turn. I mean, it's a U certificate, which is kind of bizarre. It should be at least a PG for the last 10 minutes or so. But it's just really enjoyable. Great cinematography. And it looks, all these films look really good in Blu-ray. I mean, this has a 4K scan. There's a commentary by film historians Josephine Botting and Robert Murphy from 2024. There's a wonderful piece by Pamela Hutchinson from 2024, Turning Heads, which is about Greta Gint, who was originally Norwegian, but just has such a stunning look. That's 21 minutes. There's an interview with Roy Douglas, which is 39 minutes, which is an audio interview from 2005. And he composed the music for the film. Again, just a wonderful little film. It's never going to be anybody's favourite film of all time. Well, I don't know, it might be. But it's just really enjoyable. So on to The Shop at Sly Corner, featuring the wonderful Oscar Homonkla, who you'll recognise his face, and he has a wonderful huge big moustache with all the little tics that he had in all these films. And again, this is a wonderful little film from 1947. This is 91 minutes long. And this also stars Kenneth Griffiths, who's playing a little bit more of a scumbag than he usually does. He usually plays like a kind of almost comic relief. There's George King again, so both these films directed by George King. I should say both these are multi-region, so Shop at Sly Corner is multi-region as well. And this is about an art dealer played by Homonkla, who wants his daughter to become one of the best violinists of all time. But part of his business is a little bit shady, and he deals in stolen goods in his antique shop. And Kenneth Griffith is his long-suffering shop boy who happens to overhear one of Homonkla's shady dealings and starts blackmailing him up to the point of he wants his daughter as part of the deal. Kenneth Griffith, as you've never seen him before, as an absolute scumbag. So even though Homonkla, or Homokla even, is doing things that are against the law, you're completely on your side. So it has that kind of moral ambiguity. It's just so good. Even when he's being interviewed by the police, he brings a little carriage clock along and tries to sell it to the police officer. It's got a wonderful climax as his daughter is getting more and more successful and getting her big break, while he is up to his neck in various criminal activities, because all he really wants is for his daughter to have success. So you're completely on his side, as I said, even though he's technically a criminal as well. But there's a worse criminal in the film, so you root for the wonderful Oscar Homokla. Again, it's just a hugely enjoyable little film. And then spy number 450 is Obsession, or The Hidden Room, which, as I said, was directed by Edward Dmytryk while he was in Britain for a year. And it's stunningly shot. The cinematography is absolutely gorgeous. I should have actually said what the extras are for this one, shouldn't I? I'm not doing a very good job. Again, this is a commentary from film historian Josephine Botting and critic Fyong Lee in 2024. This is a 4K scan as well. Muriel Pavlov in Conversation, 2009. 48 minutes. The British actor discusses his career with Josephine Botting at London's National Film Theatre. Humour and Horror, 2024, which is a 35-minute piece by the wonderful Jonathan Rigby about the life and career of Austrian actor Oscar Homokla, which is absolutely fantastic. And as usual, there is a wonderful booklet. So apologies for not, but that Jonathan Rigby piece is well worth watching. So this one's, it's almost like a episode of Columbo. This stars Robert Newton, who's probably more famous for Treasure Island, and Sally Gray, who again had a kind of short, brief career before she disappeared, and Phil Brown, whose name you might not recognise, but he actually grew up to be Luke Skywalker's uncle in Star Wars, believe it or not. So this is written by Alec Koppel, who was one of the writers on Vertigo, from his book A Man About a Dog, because there is a little dog that features fairly heavily in the plot. So Robert Newton is a psychiatrist whose wife has been having meetings with the American Phil Brown, so automatically you have this Englishness versus a slightly crasser American. So he pulls a gun on both of them and says he's going to kill both of them, and then he ends up taking Phil Brown away, and you'll have to watch the film to see whether he kills him or not, because that's as far as I'm going to go. Needless to say, there's lots of twists and turns. There's actually moments where you think they're not going to do that, are they? I mean, this is 1949. There's a couple of really dark moments. There's kind of gallows humour in the film, because there's stuff about acid in a bath. There's lots of kind of satirical things as well, because Robert Newton's character spends a lot of time in this gentleman's club where his companions are talking about how the empire's in such a state and all, you know, all this influx of foreigners after the war and stuff like that. That's really quite funny. It is a cracking little film. This is 99 minutes. This is the longest film out of the four. Robert Newton, who's more kind of known as being over the top, is actually kind of toned down here, and he's quite sociopathic. It's just a hugely enjoyable little film, as I said, with twists and turns that you don't necessarily see coming. And also The detective is played by Naunton Wayne. Again, a name you might not recognise, but he's one of the golfers in the comedy story in Dead of Night. He was partnered up with the other guy in Hitchcock's The Lady Vanishes as a comic relief. So you will recognise his face, and he's almost like Columbo. Robert Newton, when he first meets him, is asking what rank you are, because he doesn't look very much the same way Columbo doesn't look like he's very high up in the police force. And of course, when he actually says, I'm a superintendent, Robert Newton is kind of taken aback. So as I said, it's almost like a Columbo episode. And it's so enjoyable. Again, this is a 4K restoration, so all these films look really good. There's a commentary with historians Thurza Wakefield and Melanie Williams from 2024. There's a John Player lecture with Edward Dmytryk from 1972, which is 74 minutes, and that's an audio. A Man About a Film from 2024, which is 35 minutes, where academic and author Richard Dyer explored the making of the film, which is really good. And then there's an interview with Gordon K. McCallum, who is a sound recordist, and this is from 1988, which is 99 minutes long, which is audio as well. Again, so lots of wonderful extras on this one. And finally, we have spine number 462, which is The Whole Truth, directed by John Gillerman. And this has Stuart Granger, Donna Reed, George Sanders, and introducing Gianna Maria Canali. So this is 1958, so Stuart Granger was kind of a little bit past it. The production company, it's a British production company, and him had a 6-picture deal, but it only lasted this deal because nobody liked working with Stuart Granger. Donna Reed, this is like 20 years after It's a Wonderful Life, but she's still wonderful. And of course George Sanders is obviously George Sanders, but he just gives another blistering performance. So this one, again, is a lot of fun. Again, this could be a Columbo episode. This is about a film producer played by Stuart Granger, and is having trouble with the rather tempestuous Gianna Maria Canali, who's his leading lady, that he had a frisson with when he was estranged from Donna Reed, his wife. And they're on the continent, in the same place that they had their frisson with. In fact, they have a cabin up on the hill, and George Sanders walks in while Stuart Granger's having a party, and says that Canali has been murdered, and he poses as a policeman from Scotland Yard who's in the continent working on another case. And then obviously Stuart Granger is a little bit shaken by this, but because he was pretty much the last one to see her, because he drove her to the hotel and then went up to a room for a drink. But then later on, when they're having the party, who walks in but Gianna Maria Canali, who obviously looks as though she hasn't been murdered. But then, of course, later she is murdered. And of course, Stuart Granger's going to the police saying it's this character played by George Sanders, and you've got to catch him, it was nothing to do with me, even though he's found with the dead woman with a knife in her back. So he says to the police, you've got to find this guy, because he's the one that came in and told me she'd been murdered, then she hadn't been murdered, and then she was murdered. So we're kind of getting caught up in this, and then of course George Sanders just walks into the police station and says, "Oh, I heard you were looking for me," and that's where it kicks off. So who actually killed her and why? And again, it's just so much fun. Only 84 minutes, doesn't need to be any longer. Stuart Granger just has that kind of smug arrogance, ladies' man that's a little bit past his prime, which, so technically not that far from the truth. But obviously George Sanders is fantastic in it, because if you didn't know, I'm a huge George Sanders fan. But based on a play, and at times it is a wee bit stagey, but it's a lot of fun. Produced by Jack Clayton, before he would go on to direct things. It's a whole heap of fun. There's Granger and Donna Reed as the not so happy married couple. The booklet actually has an interview with George Sanders, which is fascinating, because he talks about the kind of two facades of him, his kind of public persona and what he's actually like. And as we know, he did kill himself later, because again he pretty much said, "I've done everything and I might as well just go." But obviously I love it because George Sanders is just fantastic. But it's just a lot of fun, and again 84 minutes, it just flies by. This is just a high definition remaster, but again it still looks wonderful, and this has got a commentary by Kevin Lyons and Jonathan Rigby, which I will be watching very soon, from 2024. And then it's got Sinister Smiles from 2024, an 18-minute piece by film historian Robert Shale, and he discusses the whole truth, its background and making of, which is fascinating. There's an interview from 1991, which is 48 minutes, with Ronald Spencer, who was the assistant director. And there's a trailer, and as I said, there's a booklet with a wonderful, very insightful interview with George Sanders, because the interviewer even talks about how intimidating it is to be in the presence of George Sanders, but in actual fact, perhaps his personal, the real George Sanders is a little bit less scary than the one we see on the screen. Yeah, just a lot of fun. So again, if you know what an indicator film means, then I would highly recommend all four of these, because you'll get a lot of pleasure from these little gems that nobody, with the exception of Kino Lorber probably, nobody would be releasing these. Now obviously some people might say, well, it's good that nobody will be releasing these because they're not great films, but they certainly are well worth seeing, again, if you're interested in history and, you know, the kind of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, of the people behind the scenes, you know, and I love that kind of stuff. Like seeing Terence Fisher as one of the editors on Tomorrow We Live. They're just wonderful little films, and again, they're being remastered and looked after, and they've got wonderful extras, and that's just what Indicator do their best work at. So thanks very much for watching. Please let me know if you've seen any of these little gems and which one's your favourite, if you've seen them all. And hopefully you'll join me again for more episodes of In the Frame. I know the last two were Indicator based, but they won't all be Indicator based. There's plenty on the channel for you to check out if you're interested. So thanks very much for watching. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.